The church was full. Every seat taken, every eye watching, every heart waiting. And Ivy stood there in her white dress, hands shaking, telling herself to breathe. He's coming. He loves you. He promised. The flowers were perfect. The music was soft. The pastor was ready. Everything was perfect. Except Adam wasn't there. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then 30. People started whispering. Ivy could hear them. She just couldn't move. Her legs had forgotten how to work. Her chest had forgotten how to breathe. She just stood there, holding her flowers so tight her knuckles turned white. He's just late, that's all. He's just late. Then her phone buzzed. She looked down. It was a photo. And the moment she saw it, something inside her died. Adam was on one knee, but not in front of her. He was outside, in the parking lot of the same church, in front of a woman named Elise. The ring in his hand was catching the sunlight. His smile was wide, yet his eyes were full of something Ivy had never seen in them before. Relief, like a man who had finally made the right choice. Ivy didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't run out and slap him across the face the way every part of her body was begging her to. She just stood there. And then, slowly, she put the flowers down on the altar. One by one, the guests went quiet. A woman in the front row covered her mouth. The pastor looked away. A little girl in a pink dress tugged at her mother's sleeve and whispered, "Where is the groom?" Nobody answered. Ivy picked up her purse. She smoothed the front of her dress. She walked down the aisle, not running, not stumbling, just walking. Slow and steady, like each step was a decision. I will not fall apart here, not in front of all these people. She pushed open the church doors. The sunlight hit her face. And that's when she saw them. Adam and Elise, laughing, hugging, people around them clapping. Someone popped a small bottle of champagne. Elise's ring was catching the light, sparkling like it was made for this exact moment. Adam looked up. Their eyes met. For 1 second, just one, she saw something cross his face. Guilt. Shock. Maybe even regret. But he didn't move. He didn't come to her. He just stood there, holding Elise's hand. And Ivy turned around and walked away. No tears. No words. No goodbye. Just the sound of her heels on the pavement, or getting quieter and quieter until she disappeared completely. She had no idea, in that moment of her greatest pain, that she had just taken the first step toward becoming the most powerful version of herself. But that story starts here, right here, with a white dress, an empty altar, and a love that just became fuel. That night, Ivy sat on the floor of her apartment, still in the white dress. She hadn't taken it off. She didn't know why. Maybe because taking it off meant accepting what had happened. And she wasn't ready for that yet. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that gets inside your head and starts asking questions you don't want to answer. How long has this been going on? Did he ever love you? Were you just convenient? She pulled her knees to her chest and stared at the wall. On that wall was a photo. Her and Adam. 2 years ago. They were laughing at something. She couldn't even remember what now. But she remembered how she felt in that moment. Safe. Chosen. Loved. She got up, walked to the photo, took it off the wall and just held it. She didn't throw it, didn't smash it, just held it and stared at his face, trying to find the lie in his eyes. She couldn't find it. That's what made it worse. Because Adam hadn't always been a liar. He had been kind once, gentle. The kind of man who remembered small things, her coffee order, the way she hated loud movies, on the fact that she always got cold in restaurants no matter the weather. He had loved her in the details. And then he had destroyed her in one single moment. She thought about all the promises. It's always been you, Ivy. I can't picture my life without you. One day I'm gonna marry you, and we're going to build something real. Every single word now felt like a knife. She put the photo face down on the table. Then her phone rang. Adam. She stared at his name on the screen for a long time, and it kept ringing, and ringing, and ringing. She let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a message came through. Ivy, please. I know what this looks like. Just let me explain. Please pick up. Please. She read it once. Then she blocked his number. Not out of anger. She was past anger. She did it because she knew herself. She knew that if she heard his voice, she would soften. She would listen. She would find a reason to forgive him before she had even finished crying. And she refused to do that to herself. She went to the bathroom, looked at herself in the mirror, red eyes, smeared makeup, white dress that meant nothing now. She stared at her reflection for a long time. Then she said one thing, out loud, to herself, in that empty bathroom. Nobody will ever do this to you again. She meant it. She took off the dress, folded it neatly, put it in a box, closed the box. And that was the last time Ivy ever cried over Adam. At least, that's what she told herself. The next morning, Ivy woke up early. No alarm. She just opened her eyes, stared at the ceiling, and made a decision. No more waiting. No more depending on anyone. Build. She got up, made coffee, and opened her laptop. She had $847 in her account. A business idea she had been sitting on for 2 years, and a pain so deep it had nowhere to go but forward. So she started. She didn't tell anyone. No announcements, no posts, no new chapter captions on social media. She just put her head down and worked, and worked, and worked. The first year was brutal. She got rejected 14 times by investors. Her first product launch flopped. She had months where she ate the same cheap meal every day just to keep the lights on. There were nights she sat at her desk so tired she couldn't think straight. But she wouldn't stop. Because every time she wanted to quit, she thought about that parking lot. Adam on one knee, Elise's hand. And that ring catching the light. And something inside her would harden like steel. Not yet. You don't get to rest yet. By year 2, something shifted. A small contract came in. Then another. Then a bigger one. She hired her first employee, a young woman fresh out of college who reminded Ivy of herself 5 years ago. Hungry, overlooked, underestimated. Ivy looked at her on the first day and said, "Nobody's going to hand you anything here, but I will never let you be invisible." The girl cried. Ivy understood why. By year 3, the company had grown beyond anything she had planned. Revenue was climbing. Her name was starting to appear in industry conversations. People who had once ignored her emails were now requesting meetings. She walked into those meetings differently now. No more apologizing for taking up space. No more shrinking herself to make others comfortable. She sat at the head of tables that once wouldn't have let her in the door. But here's what nobody saw. Behind the success, behind the power suits and the boardroom wins, Ivy still went home to an empty apartment. She still sometimes stood in her kitchen at midnight, holding a cup of cold coffee, wondering if any of it meant anything without someone to share it with. She never said that out loud. Not once. Because the world was watching a woman who had it all together, and she was determined never to let them see otherwise. Then one evening, after closing the biggest deal of her career, and she got home, sat on her couch, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. She looked around her apartment. Beautiful, quiet, hers. She had built all of this from nothing. From $847 and a broken heart. She smiled. Not for anyone else. Just for herself. Look at you. It was a Tuesday. Nothing special about it. Ivy was in her office on the 14th floor, going through contracts, coffee on her left, phone face down on her right. Her assistant knocked twice and came in. Ms. Ivy, there's a message. It didn't come through the usual channels. It came through your personal email. Ivy looked up. Who from? Her assistant hesitated. Just for a second. But that second told Ivy everything. Adam Mercer. The room didn't shake. The walls didn't crack. The coffee didn't spill. But something inside Ivy went very, very still. She kept her face calm. She was good at that now. Leave it. I'll look at it later. Her assistant nodded and walked out. Ivy stared at her desk for a full minute without moving. Then she picked up her phone and opened the email. It wasn't long, just a few lines. Ivy, I know I have no right to contact you. I know what I did. I've lived with it every single day. I just need you to know. I never stopped loving you. I made the worst mistake of my life and I've been paying for it ever since. I'm not asking for much. Just a conversation. Just 5 minutes. Please. She read it once. Then again. Then she put the phone face down on the desk and went back to her contracts. But she couldn't focus. The words kept crawling back. I never stopped loving you. She stood up, walked to her window, looked out at the city below, thousands of people moving, rushing, living, and she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Not love, not anger, something in between. Something unfinished. She thought about the girl who had stood at that altar, and the girl who had blocked his number without reading his first voicemail. The girl who had folded that white dress into a box and never opened it again. That girl had protected herself. But had she ever actually healed? Or had she just buried it so deep under success and strength that she mistook the silence for peace? She didn't have an answer. And that scared her. Because Ivy always had answers. She ran a company. She made decisions that affected hundreds of people. She sat in rooms full of powerful men and never flinched. But one email, 8 sentences from a man she hadn't spoken to in years. And suddenly, she was standing at a window, chest tight, feeling 19 again. She hated that. She hated him for that. She went back to her desk, picked up her phone, opened the email one more time. Her finger hovered over the delete button. It stayed there for a long time. She didn't delete it. She closed her phone, put it in her drawer, locked the drawer, and then told herself she would deal with it tomorrow. But that night, she dreamed about the parking lot, the ring, the sunlight, his smile. And when she woke up at 3 a.m., heart pounding, sheets twisted, she opened the drawer, read the email again. And this time, she started typing back. She didn't send the email. She typed it, read it back, then closed it without sending, 3 times. Because every time she read her own words, she sounded like someone she didn't recognize. Soft, uncertain, reaching back towards something that had already burned her once, So instead, she did something worse. She called him. She told herself it was just to get closure, just to say what she never got to say, just to finally close a door that had been slightly open for years without her realizing it. She found his number through a mutual contact, saved it under no name, just a number. And at 7 p.m. on a Wednesday, sitting alone in her car in the parking garage of her own building, she pressed call. And it rang twice. Hello? His voice. Same voice. A little deeper, maybe. A little quieter. But the same. Ivy opened her mouth and nothing came out for a second. It's me. Silence on his end. Then, Ivy? Just her name. That's all he said. But the way he said it, like he'd been waiting for it, like it had been sitting in his chest for years, made her grip the steering wheel tighter. I got your email, she said. Her voice was steady. She made sure of that. I didn't think you'd call. I wasn't going to. Another silence. Then he started talking. And once he started, he couldn't stop. He talked about the guilt. About how he woke up every morning for the first year after the wedding and reached for his phone to call her before remembering what he'd done. He talked about Elise, how that marriage had been cold from the beginning, how he had walked into it knowing something was wrong but too proud to admit it, how it fell apart quietly, on the way bad things often do. No big fight, just two people in a house who stopped pretending. He talked about the night he signed the divorce papers. The first person I thought of was you, he said. Not because I wanted to run back, but because I finally understood what I had thrown away. Ivy listened to all of it. She didn't interrupt, didn't cry, didn't soften. But her hand, the one not holding the phone, was pressed flat against her chest, like she was trying to hold something in. And when he finished, there was a long silence. Are you still there? He asked. I'm here, she said. Ivy, I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. I know nothing I say will be enough. But I need you to know. Adam. She said his name, and he stopped. The girl you hurt, she said slowly. She doesn't exist anymore. He didn't respond. I'm not her, Ivy continued. I haven't been her for a long time. I know, he whispered. I can hear it. Then you understand why I can't just... I'm not asking you to forget, he said. I'm just asking you not to disappear again. Ivy closed her eyes. Outside the car, the city hummed, life moving, people going home to people who loved them. She exhaled slowly. I'll think about it, she said, and she hung up. She sat in that car for 45 minutes. Not thinking, just feeling. Something she hadn't let herself do in a very long time. She agreed to meet him. One coffee, a public place, 30 minutes maximum. That's what she told herself. She picked the cafe deliberately, busy enough that she wouldn't feel trapped, close enough to her office that she could leave and be back at her desk in 10 minutes if she needed to escape. She arrived first. Of course she did. Ivy never walked into a room second. Not anymore. She ordered her coffee, chose a table near the window, and sat with her back straight and her hands calm. So from the outside, she looked like a woman waiting for a business meeting. Inside, her heart was doing something embarrassing. Then the door opened. And there he was. She had prepared herself, told herself she was ready. But nothing really prepares you for seeing someone who once knew every part of you, standing just a few feet away, older, quieter, looking at you like you're something he lost and never stopped searching for. Adam had changed, on the confidence that used to fill every room he walked into. Gone. He moved carefully now, like a man who had learned the hard way that not everything bends to your will. He saw her, stopped, and for just a moment, neither of them moved. Then he walked over, sat down across from her. "You look," he started. "Don't," she said quietly. He nodded, understood. He ordered a coffee he barely touched. And then he talked. He told her everything. Like the marriage to Elise had started unraveling within the first year. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a slow, steady emptying out. Two people sharing a house but living completely separate lives. No fights, no passion. Just silence that grew heavier every single day. He told her about the moment he knew it was completely over. It was a Sunday morning. Elise was sitting across from him at breakfast reading her phone. He looked at her and realized he felt absolutely nothing. Not anger, not love, not even sadness. Just nothing. And that nothing, that complete emptiness, was the loneliest feeling he had ever experienced. "That's when I understood," he said. "What I had with you was real. What I threw it away for wasn't." Ivy listened to every word. She watched his face, the way his jaw tightened when he talked about the divorce, the way his eyes dropped when he mentioned her name from that day, the altar, the dress, the parking lot. He knew exactly what he had done, and he was carrying it. That should have made her feel better. It didn't. Because the woman sitting across from him had spent years rebuilding herself from the damage he caused, had swallowed pain in silence, had turned heartbreak into a company, into power, into a life she was genuinely proud of. And now he sat here, broken, regretful, reaching, wanting back in. She looked at him for a long time. "I hear everything you're saying, Adam," she said finally. He leaned forward slightly. "Hopeful. But hearing it and feeling it are two different things," she said. "And right now, I don't feel anything." It was a lie, and they both knew it. She drove home in silence. No music, no phone calls. Just the road and her thoughts, and the strange, heavy feeling sitting in the middle of her chest. The meeting had lasted an hour and 20 minutes, not 30. She hadn't noticed until she was already in her car. That bothered her. She had walked in with a plan. 30 minutes. Clean exit. No emotion. And somehow an hour had disappeared without her permission. Adam had that effect on her once. Apparently he still did. And that made her angry. Not at him. At herself. She got home, changed out of her work clothes, poured a glass of water she didn't drink, and stood in the middle of her living room trying to locate the version of herself that had walked into that cafe so composed and certain. That woman felt very far away right now. Her phone buzzed. "Adam. Thank you for coming. It meant more than you know." She stared at the message, didn't reply. Set the phone face down. She walked to the window. Same window she always came to when something was pulling at her. The city was doing what cities do at night, glowing, breathing, indifferent to the small wars happening inside people's chests. She thought about his face when she said she felt nothing. The way something in him crumbled. Just slightly. Just for a second. But she saw it, or in the honest truth. The truth she hadn't said out loud to anyone was that seeing him crumble had hurt her too. That was the part she couldn't explain. She didn't want him back. She was almost certain of that. She had built a life that was full and real and completely hers. She didn't need him. She didn't need anyone. But forgiveness, that was a different question. Because carrying unforgiveness is heavy. She knew that. She had read it in books. I heard it in therapy sessions she attended exactly 3 times before deciding she was fine. She understood it intellectually, but understanding something and doing it, those are two completely different things. Forgiving Adam meant opening a door. And every time she imagined opening that door, she saw the parking lot, the ring, Elise's hand, the champagne, his smile, that relief on his face, like she had never mattered at all. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass of the window. You don't owe him forgiveness, she whispered to herself. And she was right. She didn't owe him anything. But here was the question that kept circling back, the one she couldn't shake no matter how many times she pushed it away. Was she withholding forgiveness to protect herself? Or was she withholding it to punish him? Because those two things look identical from the outside, but they feel very different on the inside. She pushed off from the window, picked up her phone, unread his message one more time. Then she typed back, just 4 words. I need more time. Sent it. Put the phone down. And for the first time in a long time, Ivy wasn't sure what she wanted. And that uncertainty, that small, quiet crack in her armor, was the most terrifying thing she had felt in years. 3 days after the cafe meeting, Ivy got a call she wasn't expecting. Unknown number. She almost didn't pick up. Is this Ivy Cole? A woman's voice. Careful, or like someone choosing each word before releasing it. Who's asking? My name is Dana. I was Elise's personal assistant for 4 years. Ivy went still. Why are you calling me? A pause. Because I've carried something for a long time, Dana said. And I think you deserve to know the truth. Ivy sat down slowly. I'm listening. Dana talked for 40 minutes, and with every sentence the world Ivy thought she understood rearranged itself into something completely different. It started before the wedding. Long before. Elise had known about Ivy and Adam for over a year before she made her move. She hadn't stumbled into their relationship accidentally. She had studied it, watched it, identified every crack and weakness with the patience and precision of someone who had done this before. Elise came from money, old, quiet, strategic money. The kind of family that didn't chase love, they acquired it. And Adam, successful, handsome, and from a good family, was exactly the kind of man they wanted. But Adam was taken. So Elise went to work. She befriended his colleagues, got close to people in his circle, started planting small things, tiny doubts, a comment here, a rumor there. Nothing big enough to trace back to her. Just enough to make Adam start questioning. Is Ivy really committed to this relationship or just to the idea of it? I heard she was seen with someone else at a work event. She seems more focused on her career than on you. None of it was true. All of it was calculated. And Adam, who had his own insecurities, his own fears about being enough, absorbed every word like dry ground absorbs water. Dana's voice dropped lower. The week before your wedding, Elise told Adam she was pregnant. Ivy's breath caught. She wasn't, Dana continued. She was never pregnant, but Adam didn't know that. And when she told him, he panicked. He felt trapped, responsible. And Elise used that panic to push him across the line he'd been standing on for months. The room was completely silent. Ivy realized she was gripping her phone so hard her hand was shaking. He proposed to her because he thought she was carrying his child? Yes, Dana said quietly. And by the time he found out the truth, 3 months into the marriage, he felt too deep in to get out. Ivy stood up, walked to the window. The city outside looked the same, but everything inside her had shifted. All this time she had carried the belief that Adam had chosen Elise over her, that she simply wasn't enough, that love had looked at her and picked someone else. But that wasn't the story. That had never been the story. She had been removed, deliberately, carefully, or by a woman who wanted what Ivy had and had no problem destroying her to get it. She turned away from the window. Her voice when she finally spoke was very quiet. "Why are you telling me this now?" Dana exhaled. "Because Elise just got engaged again," she said. "To another man who has no idea who she really is." "And you think telling me helps him?" "No," Dana said. "I think telling you helps you." Ivy stood there for a long time after the call ended. The anger she felt wasn't loud. It was cold, unprecise. The kind of anger that doesn't make noise. It makes decisions. Ivy didn't sleep that night, not even close. She lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, replaying Dana's words over and over like a song she couldn't turn off. He proposed to her because he thought she was carrying his child. She turned onto her side. She was never pregnant. She turned onto her back. "You were removed. Deliberately. Carefully." She sat up, got out of bed, went to the kitchen. He made tea she didn't drink. Stood at the counter in the dark, both hands wrapped around the warm mug, and let herself do something she almost never allowed. She went back, all the way back, to the beginning. She thought about the last few months before the wedding. How Adam had started pulling away slightly. Small things she had noticed but explained away. Fewer calls, shorter texts. A distance in his eyes when they were together that she had told herself was just stress. Just work. Just the weight of planning a future. She had never once considered that someone was putting it there. She thought about the rumors she had heard back then. Vague things. Secondhand whispers that she had dismissed because she trusted Adam. Because she believed in what they had. Now those whispers had names. Now they had a source. She set the mug down, walked to her living room, sat in the dark, and for the first time, she separated two things that had been tangled together for years, an Adam's choice and Elise's game, because they weren't the same thing. Adam had made a terrible decision. There was no removing that. He had panicked. He had believed a lie. He had chosen the easy, pressured path instead of fighting for what was real. That was on him. Fully. Completely. But he hadn't woken up one morning and decided Ivy wasn't enough. He had been maneuvered, pushed, manipulated, cornered by a woman who had engineered the entire situation with one goal: to take what she wanted regardless of who got destroyed in the process. Ivy felt something move inside her. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Something quieter than that. Understanding. And understanding, she was realizing, was the first door you had to walk through before forgiveness was even possible. She thought about Adam's voice on the phone that night. The guilt in it. The weight. The way he had said her name like it cost him something. He hadn't known. He had spent years carrying guilt for a betrayal he didn't fully understand. Because nobody had ever told him the full truth either. She pressed her hands over her face. This is so much more complicated than I thought. Because here's what she hadn't expected. Knowing the truth didn't make the pain disappear. The altar was still real. The white dress was still real. The parking lot, the ring, the champagne, his smile. All of it still real. Understanding why something happened doesn't unhappen it. She knew that. But something had shifted. The story she had told herself for years. The one where she simply wasn't chosen. That story was no longer true. She had been taken from. There was a difference. A profound, important difference. She uncovered her face, looked around her apartment, at everything she had built. Every wall, every piece of furniture, in every award and contract and small, quiet symbol of a life constructed entirely from her own hands. She had built all of this believing she was running away from rejection. But she hadn't been rejected, she had been stolen from. And she had responded by becoming extraordinary. She almost laughed at that. Almost. She picked up her phone, looked at Adam's last message. I need more time. Her own words staring back at her. She put the phone down without typing anything. Because what she was feeling right now needed more than a message. It needed a conversation. A real one. One where she looked him in the eye and said everything she had never said. Not to take him back. Not to forgive him yet. But to finally, after all these years, tell the complete truth. To him. And to herself. Ivy woke up the next morning with unusual clarity. No confusion, no circling thoughts. No lying in bed staring at the ceiling trying to locate herself. Just clarity. Be clean and sharp like cold water on your face. She got up, showered. Made real coffee this time. Not the tea she never drank. Sat at her kitchen table in the morning light and opened her notebook. She still used a physical notebook. In a world of phones and screens and apps for everything, she still processed her biggest decisions with a pen and actual paper. Something about the physical act of writing made things real in a way typing never did. She wrote 2 words at the top of the page, in the decision. Then she drew a line down the middle. Left side, move forward alone. Right side, open the door. She sat with the pen in her hand and thought carefully. The left side filled up fast. She had a company, real, breathing, growing. A team of people who depended on her. A reputation she had built from nothing. A life that was full and structured and completely within her control. She answered to no one. She needed nothing from anyone, and she had proven, to herself more than anybody, that she was enough. Completely, entirely, enough. Why would she risk any of that? She looked at the right side. Sat there for a long time. Then slowly, honestly, she started writing. Unfinished. That was the first word. Because that's what this was. Not weakness, not desperation. Just something genuinely unfinished that had been sitting in a drawer for years, quietly taking up space. Truth. She had spent years operating on an incomplete version of events. Making peace with a story that wasn't entirely accurate. What did it mean to fully heal from something when you only understood half of it? Him. She paused at that one. Because here was the part she had been most honest about in the dark and least honest about in the daylight. She still knew Adam. Not the Adam who panicked. Not the Adam who got maneuvered into a corner by a calculating woman. But the Adam underneath all of that. On the one who remembered small things. The one who had loved her in the details. That man had never fully left her mind. And pretending otherwise wasn't strength. It was just a more sophisticated version of hiding. She closed the notebook, looked out the window. The city was already moving, already loud and alive and indifferent. She thought about the girl who had walked out of that church alone, who had folded a white dress into a box, who had turned pain into a company and silence into power. Or that girl had survived by closing doors. But the woman she was now, the woman who sat at the head of boardrooms and built things from nothing and never flinched, that woman was strong enough to open one. She picked up her phone, called Adam. He answered on the first ring, like he had been waiting. "Ivy, I need to see you," she said. "Not for coffee, not for 30 minutes. A real conversation." Silence. Then, "Tell me when." She closed her eyes. "Tomorrow," she said. "My terms. My place." "Okay," he said quietly. She hung up, put the phone down, pressed both hands flat on the table. Her heart was doing that embarrassing thing again, but this time, she didn't try to stop it. He showed up exactly on time. Not early, not late. Exactly on time. Ivy noticed that. The old Adam was always 5 minutes late. Casual about it. Like his time naturally mattered more than everyone else's. This Adam stood at her door at precisely the agreed time, holding nothing. No flowers, on no gifts, no grand gesture, just himself. She respected that. She let him in. Her apartment was exactly what it looked like. The home of a woman who had built herself from scratch. Clean lines, quiet confidence, everything intentional, nothing accidental. Adam looked around slowly. She watched his face. He wasn't cataloging her success. He was reading her. The way you read a place to understand the person who built it. "Sit down," she said. He sat. She didn't. She stood across from him, on arms loose at her sides, and looked at him directly. "I know about Elise," she said. No build-up, no easing in. Just the truth, dropped clean into the center of the room. Adam's face changed. Not guilt. Something deeper than guilt. "What do you know?" he asked carefully. "Everything," she said. "The lies, the fake pregnancy, the months of manipulation before the wedding, all of it." The color left his face. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, head dropping slightly. How?" "It doesn't matter how," Ivy said. "What matters is I know, and now I need to know what you know." He looked up at her, and then Adam did something she hadn't seen him do before. He broke, not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet, complete breaking. The kind that happens when a person has been holding something crushing for so long that the moment someone acknowledges it, the muscles just give out. He told her everything, and how Elise had told him she was pregnant 3 weeks before the wedding. How he had panicked. How the pressure had combined with all the small doubts that had been accumulating for months. Doubts he now understood had been carefully planted, and pushed him past the point of thinking clearly. "I knew something was wrong," he said. "The morning of the wedding. I knew. Something in me knew. But I had already told her yes. I had already made the choice, and I didn't know how to unmake it without destroying everyone." "So you destroyed me instead," Ivy said. He flinched. "Yes," he said quietly. "I did. And there is no version of any explanation that makes that okay." The room was very still. "When did you find out she wasn't pregnant?" Ivy asked. 3 months after the wedding," he said. "She told me herself, like it was nothing. Like it was just a strategy that had worked and now we could move on." Ivy stared at him. "What did you do?" "Nothing," he said. "That's the part I'm most ashamed of. I did nothing. I was so deep in it. So far from you. So lost in a marriage I didn't want. I just went numb." "You went numb," she repeated. "I know how that sounds." "It sounds like a choice, Adam." "It was," he said. "A coward's choice. I know that. Ivy walked to the window. Outside the city moved, was loud and alive and indifferent as always. She spoke without turning around. I spent years believing I wasn't chosen, she said. Do you understand what that does to a person? Not just the heartbreak, but the belief. The deep, quiet belief that you looked at me and picked something better. She heard him stand up behind her. Ivy, I built everything you see in this apartment, she continued. Everything. From nothing. From $847 and a broken heart, and a belief that if I just worked hard enough, if I just became enough, the pain would stop. She turned around, faced him. And it did stop, eventually. But not because I healed. She looked at him directly. Because I buried it. Adam stood very still. His eyes were wet. He didn't try to hide it. I'm sorry, he said. Just that. No additions, no qualifiers, no explaining, just, I'm sorry. And somehow, the simplicity of it hit harder than anything else he could have said. Ivy felt something move in her chest. Not forgiveness, not love, just recognition of a man who finally understood the full weight of what he had done and was no longer trying to talk his way out from under it. She exhaled slowly. I'm not ready to forgive you, she said. I want you to know that. He nodded. I'm not asking you to, he said. Not yet. Not until you're ready, if you're ever ready. But I needed you to know the truth, she said. All of it. What was done to both of us. He looked at her. Something in his face, raw and unguarded and completely honest, made her look away first. And that small, involuntary looking away, told her more about where she actually stood than anything she had written in that notebook. After Adam left that night, Ivy sat alone for a long time. No phone, no notebook, no window, just the couch, the dim light, herself. She replayed the entire conversation in her head. Not obsessively, not painfully, just honestly. The way you review something important to make sure you understood it correctly. He had broken, completely and without performance. No rehearsed speech, no strategic apology designed to get a specific response. Just a man sitting in the truth of what he had done with no place left to hide. She had seen enough boardroom performances to know the difference. That was real. And real, she was discovering, was far more dangerous than lies. Because lies were easy to walk away from. Truth had weight. Truth made you stay in the room longer than you planned. She got up, went to her bedroom, opened the top shelf of her closet. And there it was, the box. White, slightly dusty, undisturbed for years. She stood looking at it for a long time. Then she took it down, set it on the bed, opened it. The dress was exactly as she had left it, folded perfectly, and like something preserved, like something waiting. She didn't pick it up, just looked at it, and let herself feel everything she had refused to feel the night she put it in here. The grief, the humiliation, the confusion, the love. Because she had loved him. Genuinely. Completely. The kind of love you only find when you're young enough to give everything without calculating the risk. She let all of it come. And for the first time, she didn't fight it. She sat on the edge of the bed and cried. Was not the silent, controlled kind she allowed herself occasionally, but the real kind. The ugly, inconvenient, long overdue kind that comes from years of postponed feeling. She cried for the girl in that dress, for the altar, for the parking lot. For every night she had worked until 2 a.m., not because she was ambitious, but because stopping meant feeling. She cried for the years she had spent being strong when what she actually needed was to fall apart. And then, slowly, it passed. Are the way storms always pass? She wiped her face, looked at the dress one more time. Then she closed the box. But this time she didn't put it back on the shelf. She walked it to the front door, set it down. Tomorrow she would donate it. Give it to someone who could wear it without any of its history. Someone who could make it mean something new. She went back to her bedroom, lay down, stared at the ceiling, and realized something quietly. Without drama, without announcement, the weight was gone. And that specific weight, the one she had carried so long she had forgotten it wasn't supposed to be there. The one that had disguised itself as ambition, as independence, as strength. It was just grief. Old, unprocessed grief. And she had finally put it down. She exhaled, long and slow and complete. And in that exhale, something released. Not Adam, not the past, not the anger or the years or the parking lot. Something deeper than all of that. What the version of herself that had been frozen in that moment, still standing at the altar, still holding the flowers, still waiting. She let her go. You can stop waiting now, she thought. We already made it. She closed her eyes. And for the first time in years, Ivy fell asleep without a single thing unresolved sitting on her chest. 3 months passed. Quietly, productively. Well, Ivy threw herself back into work. But differently this time. Before, work had been armor, on a wall she built between herself and anything that could hurt her. Every deal closed, every contract signed, every boardroom won. It had all been a way of proving something. To Adam, to Elise, to the girl at the altar, to herself. But now it was just work. Good, meaningful, satisfying work. And the difference between those two things, between working to prove and working to build, was enormous. She felt it in her body, in her sleep, or in the way she walked into rooms now versus how she used to. Before, she had entered every room ready to fight. Now, she entered ready to create. Her team noticed. Her closest manager, a sharp woman named Priya, pulled her aside one morning after a meeting. "Whatever you've done differently," Priya said, studying her carefully, "keep doing it." Ivy smiled. "I just put some things down," she said. Priya nodded like she understood completely. Maybe she did. The company continued to grow, on new contracts, new partnerships. A profile piece in a major business publication that called her one of the most quietly formidable CEOs in the industry. She read that line 3 times. Quietly formidable. She liked that. Not loud, not aggressive, not fighting for a seat at the table, just formidable. Yes, that felt right. But here's what the profile piece didn't capture. What no article ever captures about people like Ivy. The in-between moments. When the Tuesday evenings when she ordered dinner for one and sat by the window watching people walk past in pairs. The Sunday mornings that were beautiful and peaceful and somehow also very quiet in a way that occasionally felt like loneliness. She wasn't unhappy. She was clear about that with herself. But she was alone. And for the first time, she was allowing herself to notice that. Not with panic. Not with the old desperate need to fill the space, just noticing. I am alone. And I am okay. And those two things can both be true. Adam had texted twice in 3 months. Nothing heavy, nothing pressuring, just present. Once to say he had read about her company's latest expansion and was genuinely proud. Once to ask if she was okay after a news story broke about a difficult situation in her industry. Both times she had read the messages. Both times she had felt something small and warm move through her. Both times she had put her phone down without replying. Not out of cruelty, and out of care for herself. Because she knew, the way you know things about yourself when you finally get quiet enough to listen, that she wasn't ready yet. Almost. But not yet. She was still rebuilding. Not from heartbreak anymore. From something more subtle than that. She was rebuilding her understanding of her own story. Replacing the version she had lived with for years, the one where she was abandoned, with the truer, more complex version. The one where she was targeted, and survived, and thrived. That version required more careful construction, because it asked more of her. It asked her to hold Adam's humanity alongside his failure, to hold Elise's cruelty without letting it become the center of her story, to hold her own strength without using it as a reason to stay closed. Hard work, quiet work, the kind nobody sees. One evening she was going through old files on her computer, looking for a contract template she had saved years ago, and she found a folder she had forgotten existed, labeled simply, Before. She almost closed it. Then she opened it. Photos. Old ones. Her and Adam. Friends she had drifted from. A younger version of herself with a wide smile and no idea what was coming. She looked at that younger face for a long time. You had no idea, she thought. And yet you were so happy. She felt tenderness toward that girl. Not pity. Tenderness. The kind you feel towards someone who walked through fire and came out the other side not knowing that's what they were doing. She closed the folder, closed the laptop, sat in the evening quiet, and realized she wasn't just rebuilding her past. She was making peace with it, every part of it, even the parts that had broken her. Especially those parts. It was a Friday afternoon. Ivy was in the middle of reviewing a proposal when her assistant knocked. That specific knock. 2 taps. A slight hesitation. Then one more. The knock that meant something unexpected. There's someone at the front desk, her assistant said carefully. He doesn't have an appointment. Ivy didn't look up from her papers. Tell them to schedule through the usual, It's Adam, Miss Ivy. The pen stopped moving. She sat very still for exactly 3 seconds. Send him away. Her assistant nodded. Disappeared. Ivy went back to the proposal. Read the same paragraph 4 times without absorbing a single word. Then her assistant reappeared. He says he's not leaving until you see him. He says, she paused. He says he knows he doesn't deserve 5 minutes, but he's asking anyway. Ivy set the pen down, looked at the ceiling briefly. Give me 5 minutes, then send him in. She used those 5 minutes well. Straightened her desk, poured water she didn't need, positioned herself behind it. Chair back, posture straight, every inch the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. Armor on. The door opened, or Adam walked in. And immediately she knew this wasn't a casual visit. He looked like a man who had made a decision, the kind of decision that cost something. His jaw was set. His eyes were clear. Nervous, yes, but clear. Like someone who had rehearsed nothing and was prepared for everything. He stopped in the middle of the room. looked at her. "I'm not here to pressure you," he said. "I need you to know that first." "Then why are you here?" she asked. He reached into his jacket, or pulled out an envelope, set it on the desk in front of her. She looked at it. Didn't touch it. "What is this?" "Everything I couldn't say out loud," he said. "Everything I've written and deleted and rewritten for the last 3 months." She looked up at him. "Adam, I'm not asking you to read it now," he said quickly. "I'm not standing here waiting for a response. I just needed you to have it." He took a breath. "I know what I did. I know what was done to us. And I know that understanding why something happened doesn't undo the damage." He looked at her directly. "But I also know, and I need to say this once, clearly, with no agenda, that I have never loved anyone the way I loved you. I didn't know that when I had it. I know it now." The room was completely silent. Ivy didn't move, didn't speak. "I'm not asking for a second chance," he said. "I'm asking for the truth. And the truth is, you deserved better. From me. From everyone. And if the best thing I can do for you now is walk out that door and never come back, tell me, and I will." He meant it. She could see he meant every word. He stood there, open, unprotected. No armor, no strategy, no angle. Just a man, standing in the middle of the room he had no right to be in, telling the truth. Ivy looked at the envelope, then at him. Something moved across her face. Something she couldn't stop. Something she wasn't sure she wanted to stop anymore. "Sit down." "Adam," she said quietly. He blinked. "Ivy, I said sit down." He sat. And for the first time, in this whole long, complicated story, Ivy picked up the envelope, opened it, and began to read. The letter was 4 pages, handwritten. She hadn't expected that. In a world where everything was typed and formatted and edited to perfection, he had picked up a pen and pressed it to paper. Every word in his actual handwriting. Crossed out lines where he had changed his mind. Margins filled with afterthoughts. It looked like the inside of someone's chest. She read every word. Adam sat across from her and didn't make a sound. Didn't shift in his seat. Didn't check his phone. Just sat there quietly, giving her the space to read without the pressure of being watched. She noticed that. The letter didn't beg. That's what struck her most. She had expected desperation, grand declarations, carefully constructed sentences designed to dismantle her defenses. But it wasn't that. It was just honest. He wrote about the morning of the wedding, how he had stood in that parking lot feeling like a man walking toward a cliff he couldn't stop himself from stepping off. How he had looked up and seen her walking out of the church and the expression on her face had never left him. "You didn't cry," he wrote. "You didn't scream. You just put the flowers down and walked. And something about that, the dignity of it, broke me more than any argument could have." She paused at that line. Read it again. He wrote about the years after. The hollow marriage. The moment he found out Elise had lied about the pregnancy, sitting at a kitchen table on a Tuesday morning, ordinary in every way, while the ground disappeared beneath him. How he hadn't called Ivy then, because he felt he had forfeited the right. On how he had watched from a distance as she built something extraordinary and felt simultaneously proud and devastated. "I used to read about your company," he wrote. "Every article, every mention. Not to torture myself, just to know you were okay. Just to see that what I broke didn't stay broken." She stopped reading, looked up at the ceiling, pressed her lips together, looked back down. The last page was short, just a few lines. I'm not writing this to get you back. I'm writing it because you deserve to know the complete truth from me directly. Not through phone calls, not through coffee meetings, not filtered through years of guilt and careful words. The complete truth is this. I chose wrong. I was a coward. And every single day since, I have known exactly what that cost me. Not in an abstract way, in a you-specific way. There is no version of my life where losing you was acceptable. I just didn't understand that until it was already done. And then, the last line. Whatever you decide, I just needed you to know you were always worth fighting for. I was just too afraid to be the one who fought. She closed the letter, folded it carefully, set it on the desk. The room was so quiet she could hear the city outside. She looked at Adam. He was watching her. Carefully. Not with hope exactly. With something more fragile than hope. Readiness. Readiness for whatever she was about to say. And Ivy sat there. CEO, survivor. Woman who had built everything from nothing and felt the full weight of the moment pressing down on her. This was it. The real choice. Not the one between Adam and independence. Not the one between the past and the future. The real choice was this. Was she willing to be as brave as she had always been? Because she had been brave in every boardroom, brave in every negotiation, brave in every moment that required professional courage. But this was a different kind of brave. The kind that doesn't come with a strategy or a backup plan. The kind that requires you to stand in complete uncertainty and choose anyway. She exhaled, slowly. I spent years thinking the bravest thing I ever did was walk out of that church, she said quietly. Adam waited. I don't think that anymore, she said. He leaned forward slightly. She looked at him. Really looked. Past the guilt. Past the history, past the parking lot and the white dress and the years of carefully constructed distance. At the man. Just the man. I'm not the girl who needed saving, she said. I never was. And I don't need you to complete anything. I'm already complete. I know that, he said softly. But, she said. And that one word, that single, quiet, enormous word, changed everything. I'm tired of being complete alone. The silence that followed was the loudest thing in the room, and Adam didn't smile, didn't reach across the desk, didn't say anything immediately. He just looked at her with those wet, clear eyes, and nodded. Once, like a man receiving something he had stopped believing he deserved. Ivy picked up the letter again, held it in both hands. This doesn't mean everything is fixed, she said. It means I'm willing to find out if it can be. That's enough, he said. That is more than enough. She stood up, walked around the desk, and for the first time in years, she stood in the same space as Adam without walls between them. No desk, no armor, no carefully managed distance. Just two people, standing in the wreckage and the beauty of a story that wasn't finished yet. She didn't hug him, didn't kiss him, just stood there. Close enough that the years between them, finally, felt bridgeable. That evening, Ivy did something she hadn't done in years. She called her mother, not for advice, not for comfort, and just to hear a familiar voice while she sat with the enormity of what had just happened in her office. Her mother picked up on the second ring. Ivy. Just her name. But mothers carry entire conversations in a single word. Hi, Mom. A pause. What happened? Ivy almost laughed. Why does something have to have happened? Because you only call on Sundays, her mother said simply. It's Friday. Ivy smiled, looked out her window at the city going dark. I saw Adam today. The silence on the other end was specific, the kind that holds a lot of things back deliberately. Her mother had never said a bad word about Adam after everything. Not once. Ivy had always found that strange. Most mothers would have. Most mothers would have spent years quietly sharpening their opinion of the man who humiliated their daughter and kept it ready for exactly this kind of phone call. Not her mother. How was that? She asked carefully. Complicated, Ivy said. And also, not as complicated as I expected. Meaning? Ivy exhaled. Meaning, I think I've been so focused on who we were that I forgot to look at who we are now. Her mother was quiet for a moment. Then, can I tell you something I've never told you? Ivy straightened slightly. Yes. The morning of your wedding, her mother said slowly. I watched you get ready. You were so calm. Do you remember that? And everyone around you was fussing and emotional, and you were just calm. I remember. I thought it was love, her mother said. That kind of settled, certain calm. I thought, my daughter knows something the rest of us are still figuring out. Ivy waited. But watching you these last few years, her mother continued, building your company, becoming who you are, that calm you have now, it's different. It's not the calm of someone waiting for someone else to complete them. Her voice softened. It's the calm of someone who already knows who they are. Ivy felt something press behind her eyes. Mom, I'm not telling you what to do, her mother said quickly. I would never. You've never needed me to tell you what to do. A small pause. I'm just saying, whatever you decide, you're deciding from a different place now, a stronger place. And that matters. Ivy pressed her hand against her chest. He wrote me a letter, she said quietly. What kind of letter? The real kind, Ivy said. See, handwritten, crossed out lines. No performance. Her mother absorbed that. Then he's changed, she said simply. How do you know from that? Because the Adam I met years ago would never have written anything he couldn't edit, her mother said. That man controlled everything. A handwritten letter with crossed out lines, that's someone who stopped trying to manage how he's perceived. Ivy stared at the ceiling. Her mother was right. She hadn't thought of it that way, but she was absolutely right. I told him I was tired of being complete alone, Ivy said. A long silence. Then her mother made a sound. Small, quiet, like relief. Good, she said softly. Good. They stayed on the phone for another hour, not talking about Adam anymore. Just talking. The way they used to before life got complicated and distance grew and phone calls became scheduled and Sunday only. When they finally hung up, Ivy sat in the dark for a while, thinking about what her mother had said. You're deciding from a different place now. She was right. Every choice Ivy had ever made about Adam had been made from pain. From the altar, from the parking lot, from the box with the white dress. But tonight, she had made a choice from somewhere else entirely. From clarity, from healing, from a version of herself that was no longer running from anything. She picked up her phone, opened her messages, found Adam's name. I typed, I read the whole letter, every word. We should talk again, soon. She sent it, put the phone down, and waited. 3 minutes later, tomorrow? She smiled, just slightly. Tomorrow, she typed back. She set the phone down, looked around her apartment, the same walls, the same quiet, the same life she had built entirely alone. But somehow, it felt different tonight. Not smaller, not threatened, just open. Like a window she had finally decided to unlock. Not to let the past back in, but to let something new begin. They met the next day, not in a cafe, not in her office. Adam had asked if they could walk. Just walk. No table between them, no desk, no structured environment with easy exit points. Just two people moving through the world side by side. She had agreed. They met at the east entrance of Riverside Park at 9 a.m. The morning was cool, clean. The kind of morning that feels like the city briefly remembered how to breathe. He was already there when she arrived, once standing with his hands in his pockets, looking out at the water. She walked up beside him. Neither of them said anything for a moment. Just stood there, looking at the same water. Then they started walking. And something remarkable happened. They talked. Not about the past, not about Elise, not about parking lots or white dresses or letters or second chances. They just talked. He told her about a project he had been working on. A small community initiative he had started quietly 2 years ago, mentoring young men from difficult backgrounds. No publicity, no social media. Just showing up every Saturday morning to a community center and being present for kids who needed someone consistent. Ivy looked at him sideways when he said that. "You never used to do things without an audience," she said. He nodded. "I know," he said. "That changed." "What changed it?" He thought for a moment. "Yes, losing everything that actually mattered," he said simply. "You realized pretty quickly that the audience was never the point." She looked back at the path ahead, filed that away. She told him about a young woman on her team, 23 years old, brilliant, from a background that should have made her invisible in their industry. Ivy had been quietly mentoring her for 8 months. "She reminds me of myself," Ivy said. "The hunger, on the way she walks into rooms like she's already apologizing for being there." "Did you used to do that?" "Constantly," Ivy said, "until I decided to stop." "What made you decide?" She smiled slightly. "Rage, mostly," she said. He laughed, a real laugh, and she felt it, that laugh, land somewhere warm inside her. They walked for 2 hours. She didn't notice until they were back at the entrance and she checked her phone and saw the time. 2 hours. Again. Time disappeared around this man. I had always had. They stopped at the entrance, faced each other. The morning light was different now, higher, warmer. "This was good," she said. "Yes," he agreed. A comfortable silence, the kind that doesn't need filling. "Same time next week?" he asked. She looked at him, at his face, open and honest and carefully hopeful without being desperate. She thought about everything. The altar, the letter, the phone call, the cafe, her mother's voice. "You're deciding from a different place now." She was. "Not same time next week," she said. She turned and walked toward the street. He stayed at the entrance. She knew without looking that he was watching her go. And this time, unlike every other time she had walked away from him, she was already looking forward to coming back. The weeks that followed were quiet, good quiet, the kind that builds something instead of hiding something. They walked every Saturday morning. Same park, same entrance, and same easy rhythm that felt like it had never been interrupted, even though both of them knew it had. Deeply, irreparably in some ways, but also, maybe not irreparably. That was the question neither of them had said out loud yet. The walks became the best part of Ivy's week. She didn't announce that to anyone, didn't post about it, didn't mention it casually in conversations the way people do when they want others to notice something, without appearing to want it noticed. She kept it private, or because it was hers, and she had learned, the hard way, that some things need to be protected before they're strong enough to survive being seen. Week 3, he brought coffee, her exact order. She looked at the cup, then at him. "You remembered," she said. "I always remembered," he said quietly. She took the coffee without making it a moment. But it was a moment. Week 5, they sat on a bench instead of walking, and it had rained the night before, and the park smelled like wet earth and clean air. They sat close, not touching, but close enough that she was aware of the small space between them. He told her about his father, how he had gotten sick 2 years ago, how Adam had sat in hospital waiting rooms alone because his marriage was hollow and his wife treated illness as inconvenience, how he had held his father's hand through treatment and recovery without a single person holding his. That was the loneliest I've ever been," he said. Ivy looked at his profile. "I didn't know," she said. "How would you?" he said. Not accusatory, just honest. She thought about where she had been 2 years ago, running her company, winning, achieving, completely unaware that across the city, this man was sitting alone in a hospital watching his father fight to stay alive. Parallel lives, close and completely separate. "Is he okay now?" she asked. "He's good," Adam said. "Recovered fully. He's stubborn as ever." "Good," she said softly. A pause. "He asked about you recently," Adam said carefully. Ivy looked at him. "Your father?" "He never forgot you," Adam said. "He told me once, after the divorce, that losing you was my greatest mistake." "Smart man," Ivy said. Adam smiled. "He really is." They sat in the comfortable silence that had become familiar between them. But underneath the comfort, something else was building. Something that had been building for weeks. Unspoken, unnamed, but absolutely present. Like a tide coming in slowly. You can pretend you don't see it, but you can feel it. Ivy felt it. She knew he did too. Week 7, they were walking their usual path when Adam stopped suddenly. She stopped too, turned to look at him. He was standing very still, looking at her with an expression she recognized. One she hadn't seen directed at her in years. Ivy. Her name. Just her name. But the way he said it. "Don't," she said softly. I haven't said anything yet," he said. "I know what you're about to say." "And?" She looked at him. At his face in the morning light, honest and open and carrying everything. The guilt, the growth, the years, the loss, the Saturday mornings, the coffee he always got right. She felt it. That tide. Coming in. "And," she said slowly, "I'm not ready to stop you." The world didn't stop. Birds kept moving, people kept walking past. The city kept breathing its loud, indifferent breath. But between them, everything went still. He took one step closer. She didn't step back. "I never stopped loving you," he said. "Not for a single day." She looked at him for a long time, feeling everything, protecting nothing. "I know," she said quietly. Ivy. "I know," she said again, softer this time, like an answer, like a door, finally, opening. That night Ivy couldn't sleep again. But it was different this time. Not the restless, tangled insomnia of unresolved pain. Not the 3 a.m. ceiling staring that came from carrying things too heavy to put down. This was different. This was the sleeplessness of someone standing at the edge of something real, looking down, deciding whether to jump. She got up, made tea, actually drank it this time, stood at her window watching the city do its quiet late-night breathing. Yellow lights, empty streets, the occasional car cutting through the dark like a slow-moving thought. She replayed the park, his face when he stopped walking, the way he said her name, "I never stopped loving you." Not for a single day, and her own voice, "I know." She had meant it. That was the thing. She hadn't said it to be kind, hadn't said it to soften a moment or manage his feelings or protect herself from the vulnerability of saying something more direct. She had said it because it was true. She had known. On some part of her, the part she had buried under boardrooms and contracts and 5-year plans, had always known. She set the mug down, walked to her bedroom, opened the drawer of her nightstand. Adam's letter was there. She had moved it from her desk that first night and put it here, close, where she could reach it without thinking too hard about why she wanted it close. She picked it up, didn't open it, just held it, and asked herself the question she had been circling for weeks. Is this real? Or is this just the pull of something familiar? Because those two things can feel identical. Familiarity wears love's face sometimes, and she had worked too hard, come too far, built too much, to walk back into something just because it was comfortable, just because he knew her coffee order and wrote letters with crossed-out lines and stood in her office with no armor and nowhere to hide. She sat on the edge of the bed, thought carefully, honestly, without sentiment. Here was the truth. Adam was not the same man. She was not the same woman. What they had before was real, but it was young, built by two people who didn't fully know themselves yet, who hadn't been tested, who hadn't lost anything significant enough to understand what they actually valued. They knew now, both of them. The kind of knowing that only comes from years in pain and quiet. Saturday mornings rebuilt from scratch. That wasn't familiarity wearing love's face. That was something earned. Something real. She opened the letter, read the last line one more time. You were always worth fighting for. I was just too afraid to be the one who fought. She folded it carefully, put it back, lay down, stared at the ceiling, and made her decision. Not from pain, not from loneliness, not from the girl at the altar or the woman who needed to prove something. From here. From now. From the clearest, most honest place inside herself. She picked up her phone. It was 2 a.m. She didn't care. She called him. He answered on the second ring. No hello, just Ivy. Like he had been awake too. Like he had been waiting. I've been thinking, she said. Me too, he said quietly. I don't need you, she said. I want you to know that. I am completely fine without you. My life is full and real and mine. I know, he said. I wouldn't want it any other way. But, she said. She paused, felt the weight of the word. The same word from chapter 15. I had that one word that kept changing everything. But I choose you, she said. Not because I have to, not because of history, not because of the letter or the Saturday mornings or the coffee you always get right. Her voice was steady, completely steady. I choose you because I see who you are now, and who you are now is someone worth choosing. Complete silence on his end. She waited. Then she heard it. Just barely. The sound of a man exhaling something he had been holding for years. Ivy, he said. His voice was broken in the best possible way. I will spend every single day making sure you never regret this. She closed her eyes, felt something settle inside her, deep and permanent, like the last piece of something clicking quietly into place. I know you will, she said. They stayed on the phone, not talking, just present. Two people in two separate apartments in the same city, finally, in the same place. 6 months later. Ivy stood in front of a mirror, yet not in a white dress this time, in a black tailored suit, sharp, clean, completely her. She was keynoting a conference. 500 people in a room waiting to hear her speak. The kind of room that would have terrified the girl who once stood at an altar waiting for someone who never came. But Ivy wasn't that girl anymore. She looked at her reflection and smiled. Not the controlled boardroom smile she had perfected over years. Not the smile that said, I have everything together. The real one, or the one that reaches the eyes. She picked up her phone. One message from Adam. You're going to walk in there and own every single person in that room. I already know it. Go be extraordinary. I'll be here when you get back. She read it twice. Not because she needed the encouragement, but because of the last line. I'll be here when you get back. 6 words. The most beautiful 6 words she had ever read. Because she had spent years building a life that was entirely hers. And it was. Completely. She owned every wall, every decision, every achievement without anyone's help. But coming home to someone who saw all of that and loved her anyway, that was something different. That was something she hadn't known she was allowed to have. She typed back, I know. Put the phone in her pocket, and walked out. The conference was everything. She walked onto that stage and the room responded the way rooms respond to people who have earned their presence. Not performance, not rehearsed authority, just real. She spoke for 40 minutes. About building, about failure, about the particular kind of strength that comes not from never falling, but from falling completely and choosing, every single morning, to get back up anyway. She didn't mention Adam. She didn't mention the altar or the white dress or the parking lot. But everything she said came from those things. Every word was built on that foundation. When she finished, the room stood up. And Ivy stood at that podium, looking out at 500 people on their feet, and felt something move through her that she didn't have a word for. Not pride exactly. Something quieter than pride. Peace. That evening, Adam picked her up outside the conference center. He was leaning against the car when she walked out, hands in pockets, looking at his phone. Completely ordinary. She stopped when she saw him. Just for a second, took him in. This man who had broken her, who had been broken himself, who had written 4 pages of handwritten truth and shown up at her office with no armor, and sat across from her in a cafe and walked beside her in a park for 7 Saturdays until she was ready. He looked up, saw her, smiled. That simple. She walked toward him. He straightened up, opened his arms slightly. She walked straight into them, and stood there. In the middle of a busy street, people moving past, city breathing loud and indifferent as always, she stood there and let herself be held. Fully. Without managing it. Without keeping one part of herself back just in case. All of her. Present. His arms tightened around her. How was it? He murmured. Perfect, she said into his shoulder. And she meant 2 things at once. the conference, and this. They stood there for a long time, long enough that people probably noticed. She didn't care. For years, she had walked out of every difficult moment alone. Head high, back straight, heart sealed. Surviving beautifully. But survival was never the goal. Living was. And this, standing on a busy street, being held by a man who had earned her trust slowly and honestly and without shortcuts, this was living. She pulled back slightly, looked at him. "Take me home," she said. He looked at her. "Which home?" he asked quietly. She understood the question. Her apartment? Or the future they hadn't named yet but could both see clearly now. She took his hand. "Ours," she said. His breath caught. Just slightly. She felt it. And squeezed his hand once. Firm and certain. The way you hold something you almost lost. And never plan to let go of again. They got in the car. Drove into the city lights. Into whatever came next, together. And that was Ivy's greatest love story. Not the one that broke her. The one she built. From the ashes of a white dress. From $847 and a broken heart. From every silent, solitary, extraordinary moment in between. She had risen, and she had chosen, and she was, finally, free. The end.